All right, so good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to Resurrection Sunday. I've been trying to use that as opposed to Easter. I think it's one way I can, it's like saying Merry Christmas rather than Happy Holidays. Do you know what I mean? Just be a little bit more bold in how you say things. We've been working our way through Genesis, and we're going to do a kind of a quick rabbit trail here at the beginning. It kind of relates to last week. Last week I showed you this book, and again, I'd encourage you to maybe get a copy of it, look at it, go through it. You don't have to agree with every conclusion he's come to, but it is interesting to see how he lays this out. And it's this idea that those who try to divide God's covenant land to Israel face consequences for that. And he goes through and lays that out fairly clearly. I will bless those that bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. It's a little different than the way we normally think of it. Normally, I will bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you. This is not those that curse you, it's those that dishonor you. I can dishonor a friend. I don't generally curse a friend. You see what I mean? The difference? So it didn't have to go all the way over to cursing, just dishonoring. It's kind of an interesting thing. So last week this came up kind of offhandedly, and I didn't have the facts right in front of me, so I went to look this up. I gave two examples last week. I'm going to give you two more for this week just quickly. This will not take us long. Notice the date. It's January 28th, 2020. Trump unveils a Middle East peace plan with no Palestinian support. And you can see the Prime Minister of Israel there beaming. He's very happy with this. So clearly we're a great friend and ally, it would seem. There's the peace plan there that's the cover of it. Here's page 17. So if we zoom in, it says this: Jerusalem will remain the sovereign capital of the state of Israel, and it should remain an undivided city. The sovereign capital of the state of Palestine should be the section of East Jerusalem located in an area east and north of the existing security barrier. What he's saying in this proposal is to make a sovereign state of Palestine and give them part of East Jerusalem as their capital. Now, to me, this is kind of like, you remember the story where they're carrying the ark and the guy sees it about to fall off and he reaches out to keep it from falling and dies because you're not allowed to touch the ark. That wasn't malice of intent, right? He was, no, let's stop. Let me protect. Okay. I think that's what's going on here. There's a positive intent. He's trying to do a good thing. So, remember the date? January 28th? January 28, 2020, CDC issues a level 3 travel health notice. Don't travel to China. 29th, CDC team medical officers meet a flight carrying people from somewhere in that part of the world. I'm trying not to read it all just because it takes too long. The main thing, January 30th, CDC confirms that SARS-CoV-2 virus has now spread between 2 people in Illinois with no history of recent travel. They mark the 30th as the official outbreak in America. It's within 2 days. Coincidental? Probably. This last Monday, remember we talked about it on Sunday? This whole topic? This last Monday, the following morning, March 25th, the U.S. abstained from blocking an anti-Israel resolution at the UN. In 50-something years, that's happened less than 24 times. It's pretty rare. The last one was just as Obama administration was leaving, they abstained, because we usually veto these things to stop Israel from being hit this way. And it was kind of a farewell gift from the Obama administration. It was like in January, so it was just before he left office he did this. That was the last time, this is this time.
So being abstained is weak versus vetoing.
Vetoing, we had vetoed it the day before, or a couple days before, something like that. Then they changed the wording slightly, and we weren't fully on board with it, so we weren't going to vote for it, but we didn't veto it, we abstained. So Israel canceled Washington visit after U.S. allows the UN Gaza ceasefire resolution to pass. So the one we had proposed earlier in the week or whenever was vetoed by Russia and China. So it's very common these things get vetoed. There's all this activity and nothing ever actually happens because one side or the other is always vetoing. So when you kind of let it go through, that's your tacit approval to things because you just don't normally do that. All right, so that's Monday, March 25th. Tuesday the 26th. Sure, it's just a coincidence again. I don't know, it's just weird. So my point is that is what it looks like. Now, whether that is what this guy is claiming or not is for you to figure out. But this will be coincidence number 98 or something. Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of strange. So, all right, to our lesson. I want to walk us through what I would call a thought exercise before we start. I want you to put yourself in this situation. I'm going to talk to men as husbands, but very easily as a wife or a woman, you could think, okay, if I were married or I am married, however that would look, if this were my husband in this position, right? So, I mean, it's easy for both sides to look at this. We're going to be looking at a story of Abraham and Sarah. So obviously both are involved, but Abraham's making some decisions here. So for you are in a spot where there is no food. Very severe famine, you're running out of food, you're in a desperate situation. There is food in another city nearby. Okay? Warsaw, whatever, somewhere. There's food there, there's not food here. It is common to kill a husband to get his wife. In the culture in which we're talking about, that's not out of the ordinary. Think the Wild West, you know? I mean, it's like there's not a lot of laws and you can kind of get away with a lot. Again, at this time frame, which we're a little unfamiliar with, so put yourself in the position of, let's say, it's common to negotiate with a brother for his sister, right? There's no dad. You've got to pay a dowry to somebody, so you negotiate with the brother. Normally it'd be with dad, but because dad's not there, you're going to have to negotiate the dowry with the brother. So you're the husband, you're going to get killed. You're the brother, you're going to get paid. Maybe. You happen to be married to your half-sister. Now that seems weird, although I know someone like that. Husband and wife are married. Their parents each had one pass away, and the surviving married. So now they're brother and sister in addition to being husband and wife. Just think of it like that. It is technically accurate to say she is my sister. It is technically accurate to say she is my wife. That's important that that's that way. You are married to one of the most beautiful women in the world. Now, every man in here would say, of course I am. And I don't think he's lying when he says that, right? And the reason is you look at her through the lens of love, not through an objective lens. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, objectively, you actually are married to one of the most beautiful women in the world. And that's an actual, like, they line everybody up and she's in the top 5 or something. So that's your scenario. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do?
Negotiate like the brother and get money and go get food and come back and kill the guy that took your sister. Sorry.
I just realized I edited one of these and forgot to edit it. Anyway, it's fine. It's okay. What do you do? I think this is a good opportunity for us to be more interactive, because I really want us to think about this, because I have quite a bit. Very practical for you and I. Let me lay this out. I can say, if I'm the brother, it's up to me who gets to marry her. Well, no one's good enough. No offer is good enough. You bring me your $50,000 or your $1 million, and I can always say, have you seen her? Come on, man. Don't insult me with your offer. And she's safe. That's the mindset, right? So I can say to Brenda, yeah, don't worry. Nobody's ever going to offer enough. You're safe. You see the logic going on there? Because I mean, look, we can stay here, we're going to die. If we go, we can get some food, but don't worry. I mean, if we tell them we're married, I'm going to die. That's not good. But if we tell them you're my sister, I'm the negotiator. This is flawless. It's going to work. I can protect you. No one will ever get you. We'll get the food. We'll get out of there. It's going to work. I can absolutely see somebody in a desperate situation coming to that conclusion. So why am I talking about that? Because last week I said Abraham's a pretty dirtbag guy. I don't even want to have dinner with him, right? I mean, who in the world's offering up his wife to save his own skin? I don't think that's what was happening. The more I've thought about this, I think this is what's happening. So I'm a little bit easier on Abraham at this point than I was. By the way, I went forward in the text to find it. This is Abraham speaking. Besides, she is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother. So same dad, two different women, half sister. Legit, really is her sister. So that's the setup. Abraham and Sarah go to Egypt. Let me do this. I'm going to back up. I'm going to have us read 2 screens prior to where, and then this will kind of give us a running start. This starts from the beginning of the story, but it kind of leads up, and it also ties back. We need to see this to make sense of some stuff here later this morning. So if somebody would read for us, I'll give you these 2 screens. Go ahead.
Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram went, and as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old, and he departed from Haran. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran. And they set out to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, to the oak of Morah. At that time the Canaanites were in the land.
So just really quick, this is the first time God blesses Abraham. He does this here. Back in we think, potentially Haran, we're not sure. We think it's in that he says this. Okay, go ahead.
Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So he built there an altar to the Lord and appeared to him. From there he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on, still going toward Negeb.
Negeb, by the way, is the desert south of Israel before you get into Egypt. Second time that God is specifically saying, I'm going to bless you with this land. The first time it's just, I'm going to bless you. This time it's this land where you're at. This was going to be what your offspring get. Okay? So that leads us into our new text, which is this one. So go ahead, somebody.
Now, there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarai, his wife, I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. They will kill me, and they will let you live. Say you are my sister, and it may go well with me because of you, that my life may be spared for your sake. When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. And when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And for her sake he dealt well with Abram. And he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels.
So the famine in the land was, it was bad. It was a severe famine. So that's why I'm saying you stay where you are, you're going to die. There's no food. So it's not just they're running low. It's a severe famine, legitimate problem. When he was about to enter Egypt, he says to Sarah, right? So he's thinking this through, right? You know, I'm going to get killed here. And so he's trying to think through how do we do this? And when they see you, they're going to kill me. And let you live is not like, so you get off scot-free. No, now you're in a foreign land and you have no protection. This is bad for you, right? So this isn't like he's solely worried about himself. Yes, he would be killed, but she would be then left alone. Say you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake. There is, I'm sure, an element of this that is selfish, but it's also a very bad thing for her to be left alone this way. So when Abraham entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. So when I say she literally is one of the most beautiful women in the world, that's part of it, but verse 15 to me is what tells me that. And when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. So she's in the top 1,000 women. They're not mentioning him to Pharaoh. They're going to just take her themselves. But she's so beautiful. They're like, we don't dare do that. Then he'll be mad at me that I didn't bring her to him. She is unbelievable. So they're just like stepping back, you know. Okay, go ahead. We don't want to get in his way, so to speak. And they want to get on his good graces, so they bring her to the attention of Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. So this is where Abram's plan falls apart. His tough negotiating just ended because you don't negotiate with Pharaoh. He never saw that coming. Do you see what I mean? I can always say no to every offer. Oh, shoot, I just got, offered something by Al Capone, or, you know what I mean? You can't say no now. So now they're really stuck. And that is what happens. They're given all this stuff. Okay, maybe we should just come clean and tell him you're my wife. Are you kidding me? That's not a good idea. We're both going to end up getting killed now because we've scammed them. This thing just keeps going downhill, and they're like, what do we do? And they don't know what to do, evidenced by the fact that they don't do anything. They just let this play out. So this great laid plan of, let's go get the food, we'll tell him you're my sister, I'll just never say yes to any offer, and we'll get out of there. It's all gone to the wayside, and now they're in deep trouble. But the Lord then steps in, afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarah, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her for my wife?" So God has to intervene on their behalf and rescue Sarah, but also then Abram as well. Because now then, here is your wife, take her and go. Why? Why doesn't he just kill them off? Because God just made it clear with the plagues, these are my people, leave them alone. Just so that now Pharaoh's afraid to do anything to Abram because of the fact, obviously God is uniquely on his side, which gives them great protection. So here's your wife, take her and go. And Pharaoh gave orders concerning him, like, do not touch this guy. Get him out of here. We don't want anything to do with him. Just send him away.
Fear of God.
Fear of God, beginning of wisdom. And they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. They didn't take the stuff that they had. The dowry was kept. Abram had been paid greatly for his beautiful wife, and then they leave with all the bounty of the scam, so to speak. I don't think it was meant to be a scam. I think this was just their strategy of getting some food. So Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the Negev, back into the desert. Now Abram was very rich in livestock, silver, and in gold. I have a feeling he had become wealthy prior to this. He didn't come in poor and leave rich. I think he was wealthy and left wealthier. And the reason I say that is when they left Haran, they left with a bunch of stuff and people, and so it was already a big entourage. Go ahead.
Was he well known, like a celebrity?
I don't think so.
So here's where I struggle with this story back there. And I don't mean it's not true,
Right.
but what we don't get is where Pharaoh lives is a fairly big, there's lots of
Right.
people.
Right.
It's not a little village.
Right, no, it's a kingdom.
So
yeah.
so here are these two people, and maybe was come to this town.
Right.
So let's say somebody entered Fort Wayne,
Right.
which isn't that big. All of a sudden, because you moved to Fort Wayne, we're taking you straight to the Pharaoh. We're taking you straight to the mayor's office.
Right.
Again, it speaks volumes about how attractive she actually was.
Yeah, but they were dressing. I know.
No,
because
Muslims
they were dressing
weren't-
modestly. Wasn't
Yeah.
she was like she was walking around?
But they didn't have burqas on. Back then, that wasn't invented yet.
Okay.
So it
But
was,
when I say attractive, don't think swimsuit competition. That's not. I'm talking about just. Have you guys seen the picture from National Geographic? I thought about grabbing it. It's the lady from Afghanistan, and the eyes, and it's famous. It's from the 1980s. It's like one of the most famous pictures of this woman. It's incredible. They went and tracked her down because of living in the environment she's lived in. It's just very sad. But the point is, this just stunningly beautiful woman captured just on a hillside in Afghanistan in the 1980s. And she became just internationally famous with this cover. No one knew who she was, but I'm just saying. So that's what I'm talking about. When she showed up, with everything covered but her face, she was such a stunning creation of God that they said, we got to take her to Pharaoh and show her. I think that's exactly what happened. Go ahead over here.
They allowed multiple wives back then?
Yes. There was a specific, don't do that later, but it had not been implemented at this
But
point.
why didn't he just marry her also?
Who?
Why did Pharaoh just marry Sarah also?
Well, he did, but he, and maybe that wouldn't have been a problem, except for the fact that God made it clear to Pharaoh that was a problem. Yeah, go ahead.
so was it well known that in Egypt that's what would happen?
Oh, that
That
the
was
husband would be killed?
Egyptian,
I think that was more of the
practice?
custom more broadly or more generally back then. Yeah.
Well, why wouldn't he have run into that issue where he was already living? It's
I don't know. And it may be that it was more known to happen that way in Egypt. Here's the other thing. I think where he had been at, there wasn't, he's moving through Grable and Leo and Cedarville, and now they're gonna head to Indy. Do you know what I mean? In other words, he's in these very rural places with very few people, and now they're headed to, you know, Oz. I mean, they're headed to this huge metropolis type thing. So again, he's not a minor player. We'll see this later. His nephew Lot is kidnapped, and him and 4 other men, I believe it's against 5, a total of 5, they go to war to rescue them. And his army under his own house is rather large. So he has like a small army. He's okay if there's herdsmen over there who think she's attractive. Well, yeah, get through my army to her and you're okay, right? That doesn't work when you get to Egypt. So I think that might be part of it, but it could also be that it was more commonly done in Egypt there too. But
Do you know how old Abram and Sarah were when this happened?
I think if I'm remembering right, is he's 10 years older than she is, something like that. Somebody might correct me if you have a better memory on it. But I think he's younger than 75, I believe, because I think I read somewhere that he's 75, but I can't remember how much further in the story that is. So he's younger than that. So she's probably in her 60s, I would think. Go ahead.
Just real quick, talk about the situation and what he had to do.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it as because of the laws of what would have happened to him or them had he not played it the way he did. Technically correct that he had to do it that way. I mean, I'm
Right.
It's not a scam. It's just we're gonna die anyway. This will work if, and
Yeah.
of course, it went beyond the if.
Yeah.
So.
Let me show you these 2 things, and then we'll jump to my last bit here. And he journeyed on from the Negev as far as Bethel to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he'd made the altar. So this down here is Egypt, and here is where he's coming from. They go down to Egypt and they come back up. I kind of give you a blow up here. There's Bethel and Ai. So this was from last week. So my thing here is, what lessons can we learn from this? And that's really kind of what I wanted us to do this morning, is talk about. We're going to have several of these probably if we move through them quickly enough. But I want to kind of come back to this as we think about what lessons can we learn. What would you do? You're in Abraham's position. What would you do? And in light of that, what lessons then can we learn from how it played out for them?
God will take care of you.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you do when there's not an obvious answer? I think that's the reason I have this on here. What do you do? I'm not telling you, here's what you should do. I'm saying, I don't really know what the right thing for him to have done here was. Okay, he should have just stayed where he was and trusted the Lord. Okay, the Lord would have worked that out. He should have gone, done what they did, and the Lord will work it out. Well, he did. So either way, the Lord was going to see them through. They weren't going to die of starvation or die in Egypt. Does that make one of those the right decision, one the wrong decision? I don't know. Anyway, let's go.
Is it a little bit like Jonah?
Not
Not as
as
drastic,
extreme.
but it's still, I want you to be going this direction, kind of.
Well, the difference there, though, is Jonah was specifically told to do
It was
something,
rebellious,
and he was
though.
rebelling
Yeah.
against it and went the opposite way. This, God hadn't really told him to go or to stay or what. He had said, I'm going to give your descendants this land. Well, I don't think he meant to leave forever. He's just like, we got to go get some food. So I don't know that this was really a rebellion thing. This was more of a preservation thing, which is very normal. Go ahead.
I was thinking, at this point, Abram was reasoning things out in his own knowledge.
Yes?
I don't think he really knew the Lord to the extent that he believed the Lord would take care of it. I think that was the lesson he learned was,
Yeah,
this God who's been speaking to me, he's really
yeah.
one to be feared, and
He can do some
He can
amazing
take care
things.
of.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's
So-
right. Where did he figure this out? In Egypt. He hasn't really experienced that prior, right? Now, if he had stayed where he was, he may have seen miraculous provision from the Lord there as well. You know what I'm saying? The Lord's going to teach him. The Lord's going to grow his faith. The point I wanted us to get to is this isn't about we always have to make the right decision, because sometimes we can't. I don't know that there is a right decision. You can't say, well, I always want to do with the will of the Lord. Okay, well, good luck with that. And I think you should. But sometimes it's hard to figure out what that is, Go ahead.
So I think,
And then I'll come back here.
I'm just thinking of Joseph and his situation,
Yeah.
and they again end up in Egypt. And so, how do you figure, you don't really know God's will in the whole situation.
Yeah. Here's my thing too. Should he have said that she's my sister? I think that's a bad thing. And yet, it is technically, he's not lying. Do you know what I'm saying? You can see yourself probably, at least if, I don't know, maybe you wouldn't. I'm not going to speak for you. I can see myself thinking my way through that logically to say, look, I am a man of integrity. I am not going to lie, but that's not lying. And you've figured out a workaround, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? Especially when your back's against the wall. Yeah. But you don't do that on good days. You do that when things are really tough. Okay, go back, hit the back.
I think it has less to do with his choice, Abram's choice, and more to do with God using the situation like he planned it to kind of predict what's going to happen with Moses and Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Pharaoh's this evil guy, and you know what? They just got a little taste of this bad stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I never thought about it that way. But
I didn't either. Yeah, I had seen that this week, but yeah, you're right. I didn't even remember there were plagues in Egypt prior to the Exodus. Yeah. So here's what I've come up with as what lesson we can learn, and you may write down whatever you've come up with. We can never stop God's plan from being fulfilled. What do I mean by that? I mean by that, you can be intentionally deceptive, but God will still have his way. So we think of Jacob and Esau, clearly bad but Isaac is like clearly not doing things he's supposed to be doing. So there's like all kinds of bad behavior in that story. And guess what? God got what God wanted. No one was able to thwart God's plan. No one's able to thwart his plan here. So what we should do is seek his wisdom, God's wisdom, do what we feel convicted to do. In other words, wrestle through that, come to a conviction, and then do that. And trust God with the results. If the results go badly, does that mean you made the wrong decision? No. It doesn't mean that.
God is sovereign, and his will and his plan is going to be fulfilled.
He's going to do it, yeah. We can't mess it up. Now, does that mean if we are willfully disobedient, it will go the same as if we're obedient? No, Jonah. God got what he wanted, right? The problem is Jonah smelled of fish until he died. You know what I'm saying? It's like there are consequences to bad behavior. If you were sitting in stomach acid for 3 days, that would be bad. So, anyway. Abraham and Lot separate. So that's the next section of our story here. And Lot went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them. That's how wealthy they are. They have so many livestock, the land can't support all of it. And they dwelt together, for their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. There was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. Let me just one more thing here. This is kind of a editor's note. Is what this has nothing to do with the story. This is just, oh, and by the way, at that time the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. This is just kind of an historical drop in by Moses to let us be aware of that. Then Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen, we're relatives. Let's not get into fights about this stuff. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right, and if you take the right, then I will go to the left." Very magnanimous, really, on his part. Remember, God is the one God is dealing with Abraham, or Abram at this point. Lots of tag along, and yet Abram is saying, hey, take whatever you want, pick whatever you'd like, and then I'll take the leftovers. It's, yeah. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord. Garden of Eden is what that's a reference to. Like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zohar. Again, editor's note, this was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. The land looked quite differently then, folks, so back then it was really this lush and great land is what he's saying there. Lifted up his eyes and saw this well-watered land. Now, put yourself in Lot's shoes. Abram, your uncle, so you have respect for your uncle. He is being blessed by the Lord. He witnessed everything that happened in Egypt. He saw what went on there. And your uncle is saying, look, you take what you want, I'll do the other. You pick. Is there something in you that would say maybe you wouldn't pick the better one because you want to honor your uncle? You know what I mean?
If he'd been around, I'm guessing he'd had to have known that God had said, I will bless you have the land of Canaan.
Right.
He didn't choose the land of Canaan.
He chose right. Well, yeah. The land of Canaan, we find out later, is a huge area from Egypt to the Euphrates River. So it's actually a massive area. So I think he was still choosing land that had been promised to Abram, is my thought. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, Lot was probably married by that time, and
Yeah.
when you know further on about how the wife really, was
Yeah.
sad that she was leaving Sodom and Gomorrah, she probably, liked
Yes.
fine things, and she might have encouraged Lot.
That's a great point.
Your
Yeah.
uncle's giving you that choice, pick that one.
Yes. Yeah.
Support.
Yeah. You know that you can just hear that, can you? You know that he's going to bless Abram. This is your shot, man. Take it. Go grab the good stuff. Who knows if that happened? We won't throw her under the bus totally. Although it does fit the character we see in her later. Go ahead.
Maybe I missed it previously, but he walks into a place and sees an empty land. He goes, that's mine, I'm gonna take it. If I walked out here in the country and I saw an empty field, I'd say, okay, I'm gonna take that. Was there nobody objecting at this point?
So I think population density would be unlike anything we're familiar with.
There's no
These are
deeds
huge.
or anything?
No, nothing. Yeah, nothing. Yeah. Number one, we live in a very specific land ownership type society. That's just a culture in which we live. There are still parts of the world where there's nomad shepherds where they just roam forever. They don't own it.
So what they did is, I'm gonna live here, but they couldn't take ownership. There was no
Yeah.
way for them. Okay.
No, yeah. It's significant, and we'll see it throughout Abram's life. He never has a house. He's always in a tent. They had houses back then. He just was always in a tent. We'll make a bigger deal of that later, maybe. When you have little kids and there's a candy bar or a cookie or a donut and there's two of them and you're gonna split it, what's the rule? You cut it, you choose the half. Have you done that? You cut it, Johnny. Now, Billy, you get to pick first. Because if Johnny cuts it and splits it, guess how much Billy ends up with? About 8%, right? Here's your half, you know, this little tiny piece off the end. No, so one gets to cut it, and then the other one has the opportunity to pick the better half. So therefore, the first ones, man, they're getting the knife out and the ruler, and they're gonna make sure it's cut exactly in half, right? Because they don't wanna get shortchanged. So, I'm not saying this is anything unique. I think this is probably fairly common. If you and your friend, or you and your spouse, or you and somebody you like, you do that. There's one cookie left in the break room. Tell you what, man, you split it, and I'll cut it, or I'll cut it. I'll cut it, and you pick. Would you not pick maybe the smaller half because you have affection for your friend, and you just would like them to have a better piece? Do you know what I mean? It's just not. It's not abnormal. This is just a strange thing. He looks and sees how incredible this section is. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley. Okay, I'll take all of this good stuff over here. You can have that. He takes up both halves of the cookie. It's like from the analogy, you know what I'm saying? It's like, all right. And Lot journeyed east, thus separated east from each other. They're separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tents as far as Sodom. He doesn't have to go that far, but he's drawn to this city with excitement. And so he's got this great area, but he goes all the way up to the edge of Vegas. It's like, wait a minute, you're a herdsman, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? There's just something, again, speaking of either his character or the pressure from his wife or whatever that would have looked like.
Maybe it's part of God's plan.
All of it is, yeah. Here's the thing, God's plan is always in play, and yet people are responsible for the decisions they make, right? Here's the thing, now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against God. Just to clarify, make sure you don't remember, this isn't later that it goes downhill. No, this is now, when he shows up, they're great sinners. What lesson can we learn from the separation of Abraham and Lot?
Just because it looks pretty on the outside doesn't mean it's good on the inside.
It's good. Don't judge a book by its cover, right?
Grass is always greener.
Yeah, great.
That Abram God had a plan for Abram, a mission for Abram, and Lot was going to be
Yeah.
so we need to,
Let me show you this. This is next. The Lord said to Abram after Lot had separated. So the Lord has been waiting for Abraham, or Lot and Abram to separate.
Do you know what Lot's name means?
A bunch? I don't know. No, that would be a lot, wouldn't it? I don't know. Did you have some?
So, someone's kind of mentioned this, but when it looks really, really good on the inside, you're blinded to the rock on the inside.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Did I have something? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I think Abram had learned to be generous before that. I think his experience in Egypt had made him realize that God was God, and he was willing to just
God's gonna take
Give
care of
the
me.
choice.
I don't have to fight for
I don't have
myself.
to.
Yeah, yeah. So here's what I have. When you know that the Lord is with you, you can afford to be generous with others. I think that's what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. God's gonna take care of me, so you pick whatever you want. It'll work out. It's fine for me. Oh, you gave me the desert. Okay, that's fine. It'll work out. God's gonna provide. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to fight for myself because He's going to.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
heart thing.
Yeah, very much. This is a big one for us, I think. Don't allow the comfort of prosperity to draw you away from godly people and toward the things of the world. Don't allow the comfort of prosperity to draw you away from godly people and toward the things of the world. We are in a land of incredible prosperity and comfort. And it is probably to our detriment. Because once you're comfortable, you don't want to go back to not being comfortable. You know what I mean? And if you have a decision to make about an ethical choice at work, and you know if you do this, then things will continue to go well, but if you do this, you could lose your job, and you know you're kind of running late on the mortgage anyway, and I mean, you've got no margin left, and I can't face telling my wife that I stood on principle and now we don't have a house. Right? I mean, so there's this, don't let that comfort of prosperity draw you away. It's just an easy thing to do. I think that's what happened here with Lot. The Lord blesses Abraham again. Now notice we've seen it twice already. Once in Ur, once when he first got to the land of Canaan, and now we'll see it again. The Lord said to Abram, I keep saying Abraham, sorry, after Lot had separated from him, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever. I don't think the forever should be left off. That's very significant. Very significant. Because are we living in a day, well, let me ask it this way. Has this promise about the land ended? Well, then it wasn't forever, right? If it ended, so kind of is a self-answering question, but I will give this land that you see, I will give it to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that no one can count the dust of the earth. Your offspring also can be, if they can count the dust of the earth, then also they can count your offspring. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. To give you this land to possess. He tells him, I called you out of Ur the Chaldees to give you this land. Now, let's do a little bit of a rabbit trail here. This is in Genesis 15. On that day, this is a day, and we'll look at this extensively when we get to it, but it's a covenant between Abraham and God. And you may remember he brings these animals in, he cuts them in half and lays them out. There's a smoking pot that goes back and forth through the midst of the animals. It is very one-sided. It is God saying, I will do this, period. And Abram's just kind of, he's not involved. He's a viewer of this covenant that God is placing or making with him. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham. It was a unilateral covenant. It was not bilateral. It was not, if you are good, you will be given blessing. You see that in Exodus. You don't see that here. Saying, to your offspring, I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. If we had that map back up, It is a huge area. It's like Jordan, and I mean, it's a big area. It's all the way over into Iraq. So, but God said to Abraham, this is in chapter 21, be not displeased because of the boy. He's about to send Ishmael away. And because of your slave woman, whatever Sarah says to do, do as she tells you. She wanted him to send Ishmael and Hagar away. For through Isaac shall your offspring be named. The point I'm drawing out there is when it keeps talking about his offspring, it's not talking about all of his descendants. It's talking about the descendants of Isaac. For through Isaac shall your offspring be named. That's who these promises are for. Now let me show you this. This is kind of a fascinating thing, and I think very important for us today. This is in Jeremiah 31. Thus says the Lord, who gives the sun for light by day, and the fixed order of the moon and the stars for light by night, who stirs up the sea so that its waves roar. The Lord of hosts is his name. Here it is. If this fixed order departs from me, if I lose control of the solar system, declares the Lord, then shall the offspring of Israel cease from being a nation before me forever. So Israel's no longer his people when the universe stops moving properly. And then you won't have to worry about it because you'll be dead. So there's no end to this, is what he's saying. Thus says the Lord, and it's like, in case you missed that, let me give it to you again in a different way. If the heavens above can be measured and the foundations of the earth below can be explored, then I will cast off all the offspring of Israel for all that they have done. He's not saying they haven't done bad things. Of course they have. And those are so bad, and yet he won't cast them off for what they've done until the stars are measured out to the edge of the universe, and we're able to explore the depths of the earth. Well, we live in a day where it seems like we might be getting close to that, right? And yet, no, we're not. It does maybe explain why there's such a mad dash to figure out the edges of the solar system. If Satan could accomplish that, then Israel is cast aside, maybe, I don't know. It is kind of interesting, too, with all the technologies we have, how little we've been able to determine about the center of the earth, the core, all these things. It's all pretty much guesstimations. I remember hearing, this may not be wholly accurate, but it's what I'm remembering right now. If you take an apple and that's the earth, the skin is the crust. It's about that thick. It's really thin. And we can't get through it. We can't drill down through the core. We have never been able to drill down far enough to get through the core. So we haven't been able to explore the earth, or the foundations of the earth. And if we could, then God can cast off Israel. So here's why does that matter to you and I? Because with all the promises God made to Israel, if he reneges on those, then why should he keep the ones he's made to you and I? Has the promise about the land ended? No, I should probably make that an exclamation point. The promise God made to Abraham was unconditional. There are conditional promises he makes. This one is not one of those. It's an unconditional promise. So Abraham moved his tent and came and settled at the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. What lessons can we learn from the Lord blessing him again? So in other words, he's done this. This is the third time. Why does he keep doing that? And why does he do it now specifically? Think about what we've looked at this morning. He told him, I'm going to give you the land. They head to Egypt. They come back. They're getting in fights. Lot separates. And then, okay, now, this is the land. I'm going to give you the land. It's the same promise he already made him. So something happened from the first one to the second one. Go ahead.
I think as you look, every place Abraham moved and set up his tent, he also set up an altar.
Yeah.
So it shows that he recognized the glory
Yeah.
of God and
Yeah,
that he was worthy to be worshipped. And I think the Lord knew, because it says the Lord knows our hearts.
Right,
He
yep.
knows what we're going to do.
yeah.
And so the Lord was blessing him because he knew that he was obedient and he was going to.
I'm with you up until you use the word because. Here's all I'm saying on that. I don't think that the Lord is blessing Abraham because he was being obedient. I think the Lord was blessing Abraham because the Lord is blessing Abraham. I mean, he does it because that's what he's going to do. Now, can we receive discipline from the Lord or blessing because of, obedience or disobedience? Yes. But in this specific case, he has chosen him to be the father of the chosen people who will bring about his son into the world. So I don't think Abram can mess this up bad enough that he isn't going to get blessed, right? But I'm not setting aside the fact that we can have blessing from obedience and chastisement for disobedience. But anyway, so it's a minor. Okay, did you have something, bud?
Well, I was just thinking, it's God's plan, okay?
Yeah.
And so you've got the beginning here,
Mhm.
and he's developing the Israelites.
Yeah.
Where all this is coming, so you've got a plan that begins. Lessons we learn is God's got a plan that goes from here to here.
Yeah. And you're in the midst of it and don't know what's coming ahead of you. Yeah. Yeah. Other thoughts? Go ahead.
Galatians 3.
Okay.
If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise.
Yeah. There's two promises given.
Okay.
One is spiritual, one is land oriented. I think the promises, a spiritual promise, are anyone who has faith, who's in Christ, is then receiving the spiritual blessing that was promised to Abraham. But by becoming a Christian, it does not give me title deed to some land in Israel.
That's
Yeah, I think that's how we separate it.
okay.
This issue, by the way, is important for this reason too. There are people who will make the claim that today the church has replaced Israel and we are now Israel. And they use that kind of passage as a way of illustrating that. And so all the promises that were made to Israel now apply to me as a Christian, and Israel gets nothing. They are no longer God's people. He's divorced them. He's done with them. They have no claim to the land at all, and all this stuff. And I think it's a bad theology, but it started back 300 something AD, pretty early church era. Augustine or Saint Augustine, you've probably heard of him. He's the one that kind of formulated that originally. It became the doctrine of the Catholic Church. And then when the Reformation happened, all the major denominations went in and fixed some, what they call soteriology, which is the doctrines around salvation. That's where the soteriology comes from. But they never really readdressed eschatology, and eschatology is the fact that it's like how things will end. Well, Augustine's thing about how it will end is we're Israel. And so because they got that messed up 1700 years ago, when these guys came out, they worked on fixing the theology problems around salvation, which the Catholic Church had gotten messed up with indulgences and all these other things. They fixed that, but a lot of them didn't go back and readdress the other mistakes that the Catholic Church had made related to claiming to be Israel. So Lutheran, Methodist, a lot of those have this same view that God is done with Israel, and it's called amillennialism. We've talked about it different times in here, but it's just, anyway, did you have something?
So just a thought thing. So what would happen, what would it be like if a Billy Graham type went over to Israel and all the Jews became Christians?
What would happen?
Yeah, I mean, in other words, when you think about these promises.
Well, I
I mean,
would say this. I can tell you not the answer to that, but I can tell you when the 1/3 do that, they cry out over what they have done to Jesus when he came the first time, and it is literally what triggers the second coming. When the Jews recognize Jesus en masse as their Messiah and they grieve over him like they've lost a firstborn son because of what they did to him when he came, that's when he comes back. And it is why Satan has spent the last 2,000 years trying to wipe them out. So all you gotta do is kill all the Jews and Jesus can't come back.
Never thought of it that way.
Yeah. And what's interesting is he's using amillennialist views to help perpetrate that. We don't have to protect the Jews. We're the Jews. We don't care about them. Wipe them out, doesn't matter. Wait, what? Now, they're not actively fighting for that today to wipe out the Jews, but they're certainly not worried about protecting them either. So, and it's this flawed philosophy or theology. Go ahead.
What we're talking about, Jesus said that his kingdom is not of this world. We're part
Right.
of a spiritual kingdom.
Yes. Yeah, for now. And then eventually, he does come and set up his spiritual kingdom on the earth. And that would be during the millennial kingdom. Let me give you an answer to this question, and then we'll wrap this up. So despite Abram's missteps, God is faithful. I think he's letting Abram know, nothing's changed. I know you kind of messed this up and I rescued you. I'm still giving the land to your descendants. If we are truly his, and that is the key, if we're not, this does not apply. But if we are truly his, he will be faithful even when we aren't. Now, does that mean we have carte blanche and we can get away with anything? No. Because if you're exceedingly bad, you can be disciplined all the way up to the point of death, right? He just takes you home. You're a bad ambassador. He recalls you. To use the ambassador language there. This is another one. And I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. So, he who began a good work in you will complete that work. So I think that should give us an enormous amount of confidence to move forward in those situations where I don't know what the right thing to do is here. Do the best you can and move forward in faith, trusting that the Lord will work out the details. He could have never foreseen what happened with Pharaoh and all that, right? But it worked out. Yeah. So main takeaways. What's your main takeaway? My main takeaway, because we're out of time, I'm going to walk through that, and then if you want to comment or two, but this is me talking to me. It is my responsibility to do what I believe God wants me to do. And I'm saying that not on areas that are obvious or that are clearly stated. What I'm talking about is in the context of, do I stay here and starve, or do I go to the city next door and get food where I might get killed or she might get stolen? What do I do, right? It's my responsibility to do what I believe God wants me to do. As I do that, I will get it wrong sometimes. Understand that. Don't be arrogant. Even then, God is faithful to see me through. That's the main takeaway I think we can have. So live like you're on a tightrope that has a safety line attached. Now, what made me think of that is when I was in high school, I was kind of I climbed trees and, just crazy stuff, rock climbing and all this stuff. But like literally, there was trees in our backyard that I was to the top of the tree and would just sit up there for a long time, and I was like up and down all the time, this monkey of a little kid. Well, I decided I wanted to see if I could do tightrope walking. So we got steel cable and we stretched it probably from here to the door maybe. But it's like, this far off the ground. I mean, like knee height, kind of a pain to mow around, but, so from here to the door, a foot off the ground, steel cable. And I, over a matter of a month or so, got really good. I mean, I could almost not run, but I could all the way over and backwards, all the way back. Yeah. So it's just a matter of like riding a bike or anything else. You do with practice, you can get that. We got pretty confident. I could walk out, turn around, come back, forth, on this tightrope. Why? Because it's only a foot off the ground.
You didn't hurt yourself.
Exactly. I don't know how many times it fell off. Thousands probably. It's fine. You stretch that sucker across a canyon, that's 500 feet above the floor. I don't care how good I am, I'm not doing that, right? We live life like we're on a tightrope that's 500 feet off the ground. And we forget that this is true. God will see you through that. You're gonna make mistakes, that's okay. I'm not talking about violating his law. I'm saying there's sometimes it's just not clear the right thing to do. So pray, seek godly counsel, do all those things, and then move forward and know that the Lord will see you through that. You get to live life on a tightrope with a safety line. I was looking at pictures of tightropes, and I noticed the guy has a thing around his ankle, and it goes around and it's attached to the cable. So he can't fall. And he just has all kinds of confidence then. So with that in mind, live boldly like that. Go ahead.
Isn't that what God kind of wants us to do? In order, that to me means trust. That
Yes,
means
I think
to
that's
use
exactly.
our own brains that he gave us
Yeah,
to accomplish these feats.
yes,
And, knowing that he's there in case,
yes.
to trust what he wants us to
Yeah.
experience.
Now, there's a wisdom piece to this, right? So I made a comment years ago. We were standing in the garage in my brother-in-law's house, and he had a guy there that wasn't saved, and we were kind of back and forth talking different things. And I made some comment, just to me offhanded, but I said, look, I know I'm wrong about something as it relates to the Bible. I don't know what it is, or of course I'd change my mind, but nobody's right about everything. And I move on, and he goes, wait a minute, wait, what? And I'm like, he goes, you just said you're wrong about something? I said, of course. He goes, I've never heard anybody say they're wrong about, you know what I mean? So the point is, not that would make me special. Is that not obvious to everybody in the room, right? So the point is, I've got a decision to make. Maybe I should talk to some other people that are smarter than I am and get their input on it. Why? Because I might be wrong. So there is this idea of trusting your judgment, seeking, the wisdom of the Lord, but there's also some really good, seek some godly counsel on some things at times. So, and especially if you have shown a track record of maybe not making the best decisions at times, but maybe that applies even more. But it doesn't just apply to that person, it applies, I think, to all of us. So, all right, end on that. Go tell somebody about Jesus. And do it boldly, like you have a safety line on your ankle. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the morning. Thank you for the resurrection. It is what gives us our confidence. We know that we have already won because you've defeated death, and death is really the only ultimate consequence, and you've eliminated that for us. So as we remember your resurrection today, let that be a reminder to us that we can live boldly. We can use good judgment, use the counsel of the Word and other believers, but move forward in confidence. Don't allow the culture around us that is shifting to quiet us. Be bold in the midst of the decay that we see happening. Help us to continue to grow closer to you, closer to each other, helping each other through life. And just pray all these things in Jesus' name.